We now come to the backbench debate on financial support for small businesses and individuals during the Covid-19 pandemic. I call Manuela Perteghella, who will speak for a maximum of 15 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I stand to move the motion as on the order papers in my name. Before I start, I would like to thank the Backbench Business Committee for allowing us time to debate this important issue. I would also like to thank colleagues across the House for their tremendous support when I applied for this debate, and in particular, my honourable friend for Montgomeryshire and Glyndŵr, who is the chair of the All-Party Parliamentary Group on Gaps in COVID-19 Financial Support, of which I am also an officer. I want to place on record my thanks to Excluded UK for their tireless and formidable campaigning. Without their work, many of these stories would never have been heard. Without them, many people would have been left to suffer in silence. They have shown persistence, compassion, and a commitment to justice. This debate is about a national scandal during the COVID-19 pandemic, which impacted millions of individuals and families, including mine. My spouse could only apply for a bounce-back loan when everything stopped. I want to speak about three things today. First, why I'm campaigning on this issue. Second, the people behind the statistics, including my constituents in Stratford-on-Avon, who contacted me in desperation and still feeling the horrendous impact of a policy decision by the then government to exclude them from any kind of financial support. And third, what needs to change. When COVID struck, the message from government was clear. Help would be there and no one would be left behind. The Chancellor at the time, the Right Honourable Member for Richmond and Northallerton, vowed no one will be left without hope. For many, that was true, but for millions of others, that promise rang hollow. They paid in, they followed the rules, and when they needed support, they were told they did not qualify. People lost their income overnight. They lost their savings, their homes. I will give it.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. A genuine question, because I've obviously followed this campaign from afar. Could the Honourable Lady explain to me what were the reasons given by the government at the time for these people to be excluded in this way?
And I will get, thank you. Yes, thank you to the Honourable Member. I will get through to that in my speech. And some lost their lives. In Stratford-on-Avon, as well as up down the country, businesses owners ask a simple question. Why were they excluded when they had paid tax for years? These were people running events businesses, training services, consultancies, freelancers from the arts, music and creative sectors, and small companies that form part of the backbone of our local economy. This is the injustice that this debate seeks to address. It is important to say from the outset that we are not denying the scale or urgency of the government's response in March 2020. The coronavirus job retention scheme and the self-employment income support scheme were introduced at a speed and on a scale never seen before. According to the House of Commons Library, the overall cost of COVID-19 business support ran into tens of billions of pounds, and for many people and businesses, it prevented immediate hardship and business collapse. That context matters because it shows that the government was capable of acting decisively. The state was capable of dealing with a suite of diverse and complex scenarios. So the question is why, alongside that intervention, millions of people were left without nothing at all. They were simply abandoned. So, around 3.8 million UK taxpayers were excluded from meaningful financial support during the pandemic. That figure is supported by analysis from HMRC, the National Audit Office, and research cited by the House of Commons Library. They included company directors paid through dividends, newly self-employed people, new businesses, PAYE freelancers, new starters, and those whose circumstances such as maternity, adoption or parental leave, or those on carers allowance, placed them just outside rigid eligibility rules. This was a substantial part of the British workforce. These government support schemes work well for many, but excluded millions by design. The problem was not the absence of data, but the choice made about how that data would be used. Company directors paid through dividends were told that their income could not be verified despite submitting annual self-assessments, corporation tax returns, and company accounts to Companies House. New businesses were excluded simply because they had not traded for long enough. Mixed income income workers were penalized for having diversified their earnings. These people were not invisible to the tax system, they were invisible to the support schemes. The decision to exclude them was not an administrative necessity, it was a policy decision. And for that alone, the 3.8 million people left out must have an apology. These decisions are now rightly being examined by the UK COVID-19 inquiry. Module 9, which focuses on the economic response, is considering how eligibility criteria were set, how fraud risk was assessed, and how trades-off were made between speed and fairness. And that scrutiny is essential because the consequences of exclusion were not abstract. They were human, financial, and in many cases long-lasting. The inquiry must not simply catalogue what happened, but confront what it meant for those left outside the system. Yes, I will.
Thank you. A 2021 University of Bristol report said that the women in their 40s with dependent children were disproportionately represented among the excluded, which raises concerns about child poverty, mental ill health and compounding the effects of the gender pay gap. Does my honourable friend agree that research is needed into these and other longer-term impacts so they can be addressed?
Absolutely, I fully agree with my honourable friend, and in fact this is one of our asks as well, so that we not make the same mistake again. My constituent Victoria, who is in the gallery today, ran an events business hosting exhibitions and award ceremonies and was ineligible for any scheme. A bounce-back loan was taken out simply to survive, and 5 years on, the debt remains, the recovery never fully came, and the business is now closing. Another constituent of mine moved roles, and he was informed that he would not be furloughed by his new employer as the cut-off for furlough through payroll had passed. There was very little consideration for people in their position. Another constituent was a director of a small education consultancy. They were told that income as dividends could not be distinguished from unearned income, despite verified accounts and professional oversight. The effect of that decision did not end when lockdowns lifted. The financial impact of exclusion was severe, but the human cost was greater still. Campaign groups have documented widespread mental distress across those excluded from support, including cases of suicide linked to financial hardship during the pandemic. There were people who felt hopeless, abandoned, and unseen. The mental health consequences of exclusion are still being felt, and they should weigh heavily on this House. The excluded have 3 requests of this government: an apology to the nearly 4 million workers who were abandoned, parity of support, and an acknowledgement of loss of earnings and consequential loss. And I asked the Minister to come and meet with the APPG on gaps in COVID-19 financial support so that he can hear directly from those affected. At the same time as millions of taxpayers were excluded from support, vast sums of public money were spent on dodgy PPE. The National Audit Office has confirmed that billions were lost through error and fraud across COVID-19 schemes. The PPE MedPro case illustrates this imbalance starkly. A company fast-tracked through the government VIP lane was paid 122 million for surgical gowns later ruled unfit for use, and has since been ordered to repay 148 million to the public purse. Therefore, this debate is not just about reflecting on what went wrong in the past. It is about recognizing and acknowledging the injustice, starting with an apology to the nearly 4 million workers who were abandoned under the previous Conservative government. We also must prepare properly for the future. Public health experts have been clear that future pandemics and national emergencies are not a question of if, but when. When that moment comes, this House has a responsibility to ensure that no one slips through the gaps again. Emergency support schemes must be designed around the reality of how people work in this country. Millions of people do not fit neatly into a single employment category. They combine PAYE work with self-employment, run small limited companies, take time out for caring responsibilities, or build new businesses from scratch. That diversity is a strength of our economy, not a problem to be designed out of eligibility. The state already holds vast amount of information through HMRC, Companies House and other bodies. The lesson of COVID is that the issue was not a lack of data, but a lack of willingness to use it flexibly and fairly. Of course I will.
Thank you. I worked in health and social care during the COVID pandemic, and so I didn't experience furlough. In fact, we worked very, very hard indeed. Some of these self-employed people that were excluded that you're referencing, I mean, they are still suffering today. Does she agree with me that they are paying the price of the sheer incompetence of the previous government in how it managed that process?
I thank the honourable member for making that point. Yes, I fully agree with him, and I hope that the new Labour government will actually reflect on what went on and engage with all those that were excluded. So I look forward to the response from the Minister on this. So next time, inclusion must be the starting point and not an afterthought. But preparing for the future is not only about better scheme design. It is also about restoring trust in how public money is handled. During the pandemic, many legitimate taxpayers were denied support on the grounds of fraud risk, while at the same time, vast sums of public money were lost through waste, error, and contracts awarded through so-called VIP lanes. The PPE MedPro case raises serious questions about how decisions were taken and who benefited from them. While hard-working families and small businesses were pushed into debt and hardship, those connected to questionable contracts were fast-tracked and rewarded. Huge sums were handed out with little scrutiny, and in some cases for equipment that put our brave doctors and nurses at risk, that could not even be used or ended up incinerated. And that imbalance matters because it corrodes trust. If we fail to learn these lessons, then we fail the very people who kept paying in even when they were left out. And if we succeed, then future emergency support can be fast, fair, and trusted. And this is what those who were excluded deserve. And that is what this House should commit to delivering. Thank you.
Hear, hear.